everyone. Obviously I'm going to read to you. So, today's book is The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, written by Sangu, Mandanna. Okay. Friday morning saw Mika driving right past the wooden gates of Nowhere House once more. Backtracking, she wondered if this was going to happen every time. She guided the broomstick up the pebbled driveway. This time, she drove past Ian and Ken's cottage, past the barn, stopped at the bottom of the little path in front of the actual house. Cersei, who had spent most of the trip blissfully asleep on the back seat, now stuck her head between the two front seats, licked Mika's ear, and proceeded to give the ivy and gables of Nowhere House a thorough once-over. "What do you reckon?" Mika asked her softly. "Does it seem like an okay place to live for a couple of months?" And after that, she'd do what she always did. She'd go somewhere else, and then somewhere else, and then somewhere else after that. Mika had barely had a chance to turn the ignition off before the front door opened and Ian flung himself down the path with Lucy, Ken, and two young girls right behind him. Mika's eyes went straight to the children, Rosetta and Altamira, the oldest and the youngest of the three girls. They hung back behind the adults a little, like they were either shy or unsure, but their faces were bright with interest. And Altamira couldn't stop bouncing up and down on the balls of her bare feet. Mika was struck once more by the friendly, welcoming energy of the magic around them and the way it called to her. She could hear its song, and she could see the gold dust in their hair settling on the tips of their noses, curling around their ankles. But where was the last of the girls? There was no sign of Terracotta, or of prickly, scowling Jamie either. "You're early, my dear," Ian said happily, beaming at her through her open window. "We weren't expecting you until this afternoon. When did you leave Brighton?" "An hour ago," said Mika. Lucy and Ken glanced at each other in confusion. Ian screwed his forehead up like he was trying to make the math make sense. "I beg your pardon?" "The broomstick can get me places pretty quick," Mika explained. "It's a bit of a risk, so I don't do it very often, but I didn't want Cersei and the fish to be stuck in a car for 4 hours." "Where," Ian demanded, looking around, "is this broomstick?" "I call the car the broomstick." "Extraordinary," Ken said from behind Ian, patting the bonnet of the yellow hatchback. "I am a witch," Mika reminded them, amused by their astonishment. Had Lillian never showed them the kinds of things witches could do? "Isn't that why I'm here?" Lucy tutted at Ian. "Let the poor girl out of the car," she said. "You're in the way." Ian grinned at her as he backed away from her door. "Ready?" No, Mika was not ready. She'd almost hoped Ian would stand by her door and keep her talking until next year. As she got out of the car, her palms started to sweat, and she was abruptly seized by the total conviction that this was, frankly, madness. What was she thinking? These girls were children. Meanwhile, she was a barely functioning adult. Was she really going to be one of the first girl witches to enter their orbit? Christ, what if she became their Primrose? The thought was so horrifying that Mika almost got right back into the broomstick and bolted, but it was much too late for that. Then, with impeccable timing, Cersei nosed her way past Mika and bounded straight for the two girls. Their faces lit up. "She's very gentle," Mika assured them. "She loves a fuss. You're more than welcome to play with her." Altamira squealed and flung her arms around Cersei immediately, and Rosetta knelt on the path to stroke Cersei's back with a big, surprised smile on her serious face. Cersei let out a contented bark, basking in the attention, and the ice was well and truly broken. Really, people didn't deserve dogs. "Her name is Cersei," Mika said, and remembered, somewhat belatedly, to add, "and I'm Mika." Rosetta tore herself away from Cersei and politely introduced herself. "And this is Altamira," she went on. "Terracotta is, not feeling very well." That's a shame, said Mika, privately wondering if Jamie had also been afflicted with this mysterious illness. I hope she feels better soon. Satisfied that Mika had conveyed them to a place with excellent new friends, Cersei trotted back to Mika's side, tail wagging. Both Rosetta and Altamira took this as an indication that it was safe to come closer. Mika glanced uncertainly at Ian, Lucy, and Ken, none of whom made the slightest attempt to intervene. She assumed this meant they wanted to let her decide how she wanted to handle her relationship with the girls, which was very nice and everything, but she hadn't the faintest idea of what to do with children. Okay then, maybe it was best to treat them like they were simply very small adults. Do you think you could help me move my stuff into the house? She asked the girls. There's a lot, I'm afraid. The girls agreed to this with enthusiasm, possibly because they were just very kind girls, or possibly because they were very curious about Mika's possessions. Either suited her just fine. Let me get everything out of the car, she went on, and then you can show me where it all needs to go. Ian, who was peeking nosily through the car's rear windscreen, ventured an opinion. It doesn't look like there's much in here, my dear. Where, for instance, is the pond we were promised? Said Mika, which made Rosetta and Altamira giggle. I'm a witch. How long do you think my secret would stay secret if anyone could just peek into my car and see all of my witchy possessions? At which point, Mika proceeded to reach into the car and retrieve, in order, 2 quaint white wheelie suitcases made out of rattan, a scuffed trunk with the words Cersei's favorite things embossed on the leather strap that buckled it shut, a collection of sturdy twigs, a cauldron made out of solid gold, a collection of tea jars, a box of teacups, teapots, homemade jams, dried herbs, and other kitchen bits, a smaller cauldron, 13 wooden crates packed to the brim with books and potions, a spell book bursting at the seams, a picnic basket filled with silver spoons, glass droppers, and tiny Pyrex measuring cups, a collapsible greenhouse that uncollapsed right there in the middle of the driveway and became an actual full-sized greenhouse crammed with pots, plants, and herbs, a stray sock, and finally, a pond. More precisely, a rocky, mossy pond that was a good 6 feet across on its shortest side, that seemed to be floating in the air, and that appeared to have somehow arrived intact with water, lily pads, and 4 koi fish swimming around in it. Satisfied with the job well done, Mika dusted off her dress and closed the driver's side door of the yellow hatchback with a final click. This was about as much as Lucy could come up with. Her eyes, very round, 7-year-old Altamira said, with perfect gravity, that was some excellent Mary Poppins shit right there. Rosetta gasped. Lucy and Ken turned as one to Ian, who looked more than a little guilty. And Mika just about died laughing. Thank you, Altamira, she said, wiping tears from the corner of her eyes. It was rather impressive, if I do say so myself. Now, do you think you could show me where I'm going to be staying? Taking one of the wheelie suitcases by the handle, Altamira turned and trotted cheerfully to the open front door. Mika followed, 2 crates of books stacked on top of each other in her arms, with Cersei at her heels and Rosetta right behind them with the other suitcase in tow. Inside, she left her shoes by the front door and let the girls lead her to the stairs, past the big, colorful front room, 2 closed doors, and the open door to the kitchen. The house was bright and airy, and just a tad untidy, just as she remembered it from earlier in the week, and despite its enormous size, she was struck by how snug it felt, how cozy. Mika moved house so frequently that she'd never lived anywhere that felt well and truly lived in. She'd lived in Primrose's house for 18 years, of course, but that didn't count because it had always felt like Primrose's house, and in any case, no one would have ever called it cozy. But Nowhere House, for all that its name conjured up a place that was lonely and rootless, was anything but. It was, in fact, very lived in. Giving the house a closer look than she'd had the opportunity to on her previous visit, Mika noticed that there were dozens of framed photographs on the walls of the girls at various ages, from infancy to the present. The girls with one or more of the adults, and even a couple of lovely, chaotic, unstaged pictures of all three girls with all four adults. Lillian, on the other hand, was barely present. Of the few photographs she was in, at least Mika assumed it was her, she was on the edges, in motion and unclear, as if she hadn't wanted to be included and had tried to get out of the shot at the last minute. Mika, who had not had any luck finding a decent picture of Lillian when she'd Googled her the night before, got the sense of a woman past middle age with white skin, fair hair, and a slim figure, but that was about it. She doesn't like having pictures taken of her, Rosetta explained, correctly interpreting Mika's confusion as they both examined the walls. She says it's because of what she is. Mika nodded. She knew of at least 2 witches in the society who point-blank refused to allow themselves to be photographed. She didn't understand it precisely because it wasn't like witches were ageless, immortal creatures who were afraid someone might dig up an old picture of them from 200 years ago and expose everything. But it wasn't up to her to quibble with how other witches preserve their secrets. At the top of the stairs, a large landing branched off into several rooms. There was a single bay window set into the wall opposite the stairs, letting more light in, and Mika looked outside to orient herself. She choked back a giggle when she spotted Ian below, waving his arms slowly over the floating koi pond like he was determined to find the invisible strings holding it up. "This is my room," Altamira announced, proudly jabbing a finger through the open doorway of one of the rooms leading off the landing. Mika caught a glimpse of a rainbow-patterned playtent, a handheld game console, and an absurd number of stuffed animals before she was swept along to the doorway of the next room, a much more muted, calming room with piles of books everywhere. "This is Rosetta's room, and this one is Terracotta's." Mika noticed that Terracotta's bold, bright room had Pokemon plushies, an intricate model train, and absolutely no terracotta. She also noticed the mortified look on Rosetta's face. "She's not ill at all, is she?" Mika asked. Cheeks very red, Rosetta shook her head. "She didn't want to come meet you," she admitted. "She told me I could tell you as much, but I didn't want to. You were afraid it might upset me." Mika guessed. "That was very kind of you, Rosetta. I promise I'm not upset. Terracotta can meet you whenever she's ready." "Ahem." Altamira cut in impatiently, her free hand scratching Circe's golden head. "I still haven't shown you the other rooms." "Woof," Circe agreed. "I'm so sorry," said Mika at once. "Go ahead." "Well, that one is Lucy's room, and that one is Jamie's," Altamira went on importantly. The doors of both rooms were only slightly ajar, so Mika couldn't really see what was inside. "That's the door to the upstairs bathroom. There's another one downstairs, and this," she added, bouncing on the balls of her feet again, "is where you'll be staying." The source of Altamira's excitement was a white door at the end of the hallway. She opened it to show them a short flight of stairs which presumably led up to a loft or attic. "I'll be in the attic?" Mika asked, thrilled with this turn of events. "I've never lived in an attic before." "How romantic! A witch in an attic?" "It doesn't sound romantic to me," said Altamira doubtfully. But there was a tiny smile on Rosetta's serious face. "I was afraid you might think you'd been relegated to playing the part of the mad woman in the attic," she said to Mika. "It didn't even cross my mind," said Mika, grinning. "I do appreciate a child with a literary turn of mind, Rosetta." With an enthusiastic bark, Circe decided she would be the first to examine the new room and vanished up the stairs. Mika let the girls go next, trailing her suitcases behind them, and she followed with the boxes. The attic was a big space, enormous compared to the spaces she was used to living in. It spanned what must have been half the house, with a ceiling starting high at the peak of the roof and sloping down to the opposite wall. It was spotlessly clean, with polished wood beams, hardwood floorboards, and walls painted a warm sunny yellow. A fluffy cream rug covered part of the floor. Whatever had been stored up here before had obviously been moved, because there wasn't a single box, cobweb, or dusty treadmill to be seen. Instead, there was a desk, a rocking chair, a chest of drawers, a nightstand, and a double bed made up of white sheets, 4 pillows, and a duvet printed with a garden of large, clustered white daisies on a yellow background. It was simple, with all the essentials, leaving her plenty of space for her own possessions and the opportunity to decorate however she wanted. The faint scents of paint, new furniture, and citrus cleaning spray lingered, which meant the room must have only been sorted out the previous day, and Mika was touched by how much trouble they'd gone to. But the real beauty of the attic was the balcony. It was beyond a pair of double-glazed glass doors set into the back wall of the room, both of which had been left wide open to let in the cold and the sharp sea salt air. As soon as she saw it, Mika dashed across the attic to get a better look. The balcony was small, with a busy little hive of bees thriving in the gables above, and a simple white iron railing around the floorboards. The view was incredible. If she looked left or right, she could see over the trees and along the coast, where the occasional house and boat broke up the landscape of yellowish, heathery dunes. Ahead, she could see the back garden, with the glorious sunflowers and the girls' treehouse, and then over the hedge, the wild dunes, the shrubs of vivid blue sea holly, the trail down to the empty white beach and the sea itself. This is perfect, she breathed, turning back to the waiting girls and stopping in her tracks. Altamira was hovering about a foot off the ground. The gold dust of magic around her was brighter than it had been before her. She'd obviously sat down at some point in the past few minutes, because she was now floating in a cross-legged position, her chin propped on her hand, as she waited impatiently for Mika to finish looking around the room. She didn't seem to have noticed that she'd left the floor behind. Rosetta was also watching Mika, and hadn't noticed it either. Well, this isn't good. Mika had been 5 years old the first time she floated off the ground by accident. The next day, she'd had a new nanny and a rare, unscheduled visit from Primrose. It hadn't happened much after that. She learned to quickly control that particular bit of magical mischief. She'd also been alone. There had been much less magic around. Altamira, just 7 years old, in a house with 2 other young witches, and more magic than Mika had ever seen in one place, didn't stand a chance. But that was why she was here, wasn't it? Can you get yourself packed out to the floor, Altamira? Mika asked. Rosetta turned, surprised. Altamira blinked, looked around, and burst into delighted laughter. I'm floating. Look, Rosetta. I'm afraid I'm going to have to be very boring and grown up for a minute, Mika said apologetically. I know you're having fun, but levitation isn't safe if you can't control it. Altamira gave her a puzzled look. You mean because I'm my fault? But I'm only a little bit off the floor anyway. It won't hurt. It's more about whether or not you can get yourself back down. Can you? Altamira uncrossed her legs and wiggled them. Nothing. She closed her eyes and screwed her face up, concentrating. Nothing. Have you ever cast a spell before? Mika asked her. On purpose, I mean. I think so, Altamira replied. There've been a couple of times, haven't there, Rosetta? Like that time I really wanted a plum off the tree, but it was too high for me to reach. So I just concentrated on it for a minute, and wiggled my fingers and asked it to fall into my hand, and it did.
Mika smiled. That's good. That means you already know that the first thing any good spell needs is intent. You want something, so you figure out a way to make it happen. In your case, you wanted the plum, but it wouldn't have been enough to just look at the plum and think, I want it. The spell needs the how, as well as the what. You had to figure out how you might get the plum, which is what you did. You asked for it to fall into your hand. Mika was quite certain she was explaining this very badly, not least because her own understanding of witchiness was nebulous. But she knew she had to try, or there was simply no point in her being there.